You can't have your own court inside a community and punish someone and start flogging them.
Yeah.
So
if you're flogging someone, Keller Town Hall, that probably doesn't look good.
No, not a good look. So certainly you can imagine a situation where maybe you've got a bunch of polygamy going on, you've got women being abused, and these are things we don't want going on in Texas. You don't get to say you're within a certain community, so therefore you're not subject to that law. Welcome to Silberman Law Firm's Weekly Docket, episode 63. Today is March 27th, 2025. I'm Phil Silberman, your host and owner of the firm. I'm joined by Austin Black, who's my co-host, who works in our Dallas office. How are you doing today, Mr. Black?
I am doing great. I'm glad we're getting some rain here this afternoon. So it's been a little bit hot for March, but
it's raining down here in Houston too. But all right.
Oh yeah, I'm even better because I'm not in Houston like I was last week, man. I hate being in Houston. Okay. So this
week, I don't like Houston that much. Everybody hates Houston. There are some people that I think are institutionalized that say they like Houston, but no one lives here for the weather. They just live here because there's a bunch of oil and gas money here. But
I think Houston has the best multicultural food in Texas, but aside from that, it's only positive in my opinion. But
that's true. We have wonderful ethnic food. Yeah. All right. What is on our docket, Austin, today?
Legal news section. So first we're talking about the Texas AG, who is investigating a city in Collin County that is predominantly city council. Most of city governance is made up of people who practice Islam, and the AG is investigating this city for quote unquote instituting Sharia law. We'll talk about it, exactly how successful we think that's going to be, what the definition of Sharia law is, and our own opinions on it. Then moving on to our legal questions section, we are going to be talking about how exactly liability for valuables being taken from a hotel works out. There can be different considerations based on exactly what you did with the property when it was taken, but we'll mention a specific situation involving a country music star and how that played out and how it might play out practically for you if you were ever in that situation. And then we'll be moving on to talking about acceptance rates to private high schools, on exactly what people are entitled to if they receive an acceptance letter, if that's like a binding contract, how exactly obligations on those acceptances can be breached. Can you just decide not to go the day you would start? If there would be any damages resulting therefrom, we'll talk about it. Then moving on to our rant and rave section. If you want to put on all black clothes and go walk in traffic at night, how should you do that? We'll let you know, because I feel like that's a desire of a lot of people, and that'll be our show for today.
This is all real topics that we got this week, and all actual questions. And
yes, someone did indeed call our firm and say, hey, I want to wear all black clothes and walk in traffic. What side of the street should I walk? And we're joking. That did not happen, but yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and get it kicked off with our legal news section, okay? And the first thing we're talking about is the Texas Attorney General. That's Ken Paxton, if you're not local to Texas. And Governor Abbott, at the behest of Governor Abbott, they're investigating this.
Governor Hot Wheels, right?
Never appropriate to make.
Oh my gosh, like that.
Never appropriate to make fun of someone's disability. We can go on a whole tangent about how Governor Abbott became disabled and why a lot of people think he's a hypocrite for doing tort reform and all that. But we're not on that today. That's not the show today.
Yes,
don't touch it. So anyway, Ken Paxton, Greg Abbott, they're launching an investigation into what they're calling a Muslim megacity in Collin County. And Austin, you're in the DFW. For our listeners that don't know DFW, Collin County is north of Dallas. It's a very plush, affluent county.
I live right next to Collin County. I live in Richardson. So
yeah. What's going on is there's this development called Epic City, and they've got 1,000 units, some single family homes, some apartments. They've got a senior living center. They've got a mosque in the community. They've got a faith-based Muslim kindergarten through 12th grade school. And it sounds like an okay thing. I don't see what the problem is, but apparently Ken Paxton and Greg Abbott, they say that what's really going on in this community is that Sharia law is being practiced. And yeah, and if they're practicing Sharia law, then that can run afoul of our Texas and US based laws, and we're just not going to tolerate that. That's the idea. How do you, off the cuff, how do you feel about that, Austin?
I would agree with that. If anyone is taking any sort of religious law and trying to use it to supersede just law of the land in the US, then I think that's wrong.
Yeah. Now, just to be clear, and again, I've got a Jewish
Not just
background.
Sharia law. I'm telling you, if it was
Yeah.
Christian, same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Not all religious law will necessarily run afoul of
Yeah.
secular law. So I'm in Houston. We have an Orthodox Jewish community. It's Willow Bend. And I'll give you an example. There's some laws in Leviticus from the Old Testament that say you're only supposed to take so many steps on the Sabbath. And that's actually Talmudic law. The idea is you don't work on the Sabbath. Okay. But we're not gonna go that nuanced.
No
with it.
pressing elevator buttons for you.
Yeah. But they actually have a guy who stands in the street on the Sabbath, on the Shabbos, and he makes sure people don't walk too much. Or yeah, Austin, this is real. And they've got a tailor. Like there's a Levitical law that says you're not supposed to wear a shirt with different kinds of fabric. That's a Levitical law. And they've got a Jewish tailor that will check samplings of your clothing to make sure it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, Austin, because it doesn't run afoul. It's not violating any.
Yeah, it's
there's-
adding more restrictions onto you, not superseding restrictions.
Yes, my people are good. We're good at adding restrictions, but it does become a problem. Like, for example, polygamy. All right. Now, the patriarchs in the Old Testament have practiced polygamy, right? Abraham essentially was a polygamist, and that's just the way it was. But Muslim people also have practiced some polygamy. That's an example that is illegal, okay, under Texas and probably also U.S. law to be a bigamist or a polygamist. So Sharia law also says that women need to have guardians. That's completely opposite to our law. And then there's religious crimes, and many of the religious crimes require flogging. And you can't flog someone. You can't have your own court inside a community and punish someone and start flogging them.
Yeah.
So that
You're flogging someone, Keller Town Hall, that probably doesn't look good.
No, not a good look. So certainly you can imagine a situation where maybe you've got a bunch of polygamy going on, you've got women being abused, and these are things we don't want going on in Texas. You don't get to say you're within a certain community, so therefore you're not subject to that law. That's not the way it works. Now, how does this investigation work, Austin? I don't know. They're going to send somebody in with a suit and start asking people if they've been beaten or they've got multiple wives. I don't know practically what this is going to look like.
Yeah.
But for certain, this is not good stuff if it's going on. Then what do you do, Austin? How do you enforce this? Let's say they do an investigation and they find that there's rampant polygamy and that there's been abuse. What are some of the recourses we have?
Recourses that they would have for that happening? I'm not even really sure. Well, if it's rampant polygamy, I'm just not really sure. What are you going to do? If there's like people being beat, right? That's easy. You take the person, do it in prison. That's super simple.
Yeah.
But if people are practicing polygamy, I'm not really sure. Even in Utah, right? So they lowered, I think in around 2022, they lowered the punishment in Utah to just like a 3rd-degree misdemeanor or something for practicing polygamy, for bigamy in Utah. People still do it all the time because there's a lot of Mormons there. And as far as I know, from my reading on this evidence, it's not really heavily enforced because they don't really have a mechanism to actually enforce it a huge amount. If people know that it's happening and the law enforcement isn't really good, if it's quote unquote not hurting anyone, they're not really going to go out and be like, nope, what up, you guys?
Yeah, I have to check the state of Texas kind of polygamy enforcement. Some of this stuff can get into sort of human trafficking and oppression. And it's hard to say how much of that is going on.
Sure.
They're going to have to prosecute people individually. They're somehow going to have to catch people. They're going to have to, the prosecutor in Collin County and the district attorney's office going to have some evidence. There's going to have to be charges. Oftentimes the problem in these close-knit communities is that the people are unwilling to testify. So the prosecutor is going to have no evidence. So enforcement of this is going to be very difficult.
Yeah.
Now let me tell you what Israel did. And I tried searching this on the internet. I actually could not find it. but I'm pretty sure I don't trust Google as much anymore when I'm looking for things that are not super kosher, pun very much intended, right? Because we're talking about Israel. And Israel had a problem with a lot of Russian Jews, like Soviet era Jews coming to Israel. And let's just say the Russian Jews weren't exactly the biggest rule followers, or they didn't really love the law as much as some of the other Jewish people from other countries in Europe.
Okay.
So the Russian Jews would do these own communities, and there's sort of these outposts, and you can imagine what happens. Like rampant criminal activity started to spring up in these Jewish Russian settlements in Israel. So what the government of Israel did, instead of launching an investigation and trying to prosecute people individually, they just got a bunch of bulldozers and gave them like 5 minutes warning and just bulldozed all the Russian settlements. Yeah. So that's one way to handle it.
That is one way to handle it. I think that like actually meet the legal definition of genocide, but yes.
No, they weren't there. They didn't. They
No,
weren't
no,
like
no. I understand that. But like displacing people like that,
Oh,
I think yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I'm not advocating that. That's just an
Oh no,
example of.
I know, but it's very similar to what the Turkish government did for Syrian refugees when they started removing settlements of Christians in the area and like religious minorities. And they removed them. The government took back those, or is it? No, I'm sorry. No, this is not Turkey. It was the Syrian government. The Syrian government took back portions of cities that they knew were occupied primarily by religious minorities to stop them from coming back.
Yeah, some of that going on for sure. Yeah. We're not advocating it, but we'll see what happens with this epic city and what's going on up there. We'll keep everyone posted on that. All right, that brings us to our legal question section. Country music star, this is what happened. The guy calls in, says, look, I was at a hotel. We were doing a show. I had $5,000 of clothes and 20 grand of jewelry on me. And when you travel around and you're in a hotel, you often will send your clothes out to be washed.
Yes.
And the hotel will wash them. So he leaves the jewelry accidentally in the clothes. And the housekeeper maid service comes up, picks up the laundry. And then sure enough, he calls down there the next day. Hey, I left the clothes and I also left his jewelry. Do you still have it? Can I get it back? All right. Big surprise. The maid service says, we lost the clothes and we didn't know anything about the jewelry. So he calls up and says, hey, I've lost the clothes, lost the jewelry. I want to file a lawsuit against the hotel because obviously the housekeeper that took it, she doesn't have anything. So you can't go after the housekeeper because she's judgment proof.
Oh.
And so what do you think, Austin? Good case against the hotel, bad case? What's the hotel liable for?
I don't think that the hotel would have much exposure here. Because if he just left the stuff out in a pile of laundry, right, the hotel wasn't like, you don't even know if the person who picked it up knew what was inside, so even saw what was inside it. They could have just disposed of the clothes. You don't have any evidence that these people went in and took it. And I think he was at least some percent negligent in where he left it.
Hold on, because I think there's a misunderstanding of the facts.
Okay.
He sent the clothes out to the laundry service.
I thought he left them I thought he left the clothes on like the floor of the hotel.
No, he sent the clothes out. Okay, so knowing that he left the clothes, he sent the clothes out to the laundry service. What do you think about it?
And the laundry service is something that is just owned by the hotel?
Owned by the hotel, yeah.
Yes. I think the hotel should be liable for that. Yeah.
For clothes and jewelry?
For clothes and jewelry, yes, I do.
Okay. Interesting. Here's my general take on it with the law. And I haven't researched it, but I've studied this a little bit. Generally, a business is not liable for the criminal acts of the independent criminal acts of its employees, right? Austin, I'm not saying you'd ever do this, but I'm just going to use this as an example. Let's say you've got to make it criminal. Let's say someone pays us $5 grand for a litigation retainer. You instruct the bookkeeper to write a check $5 grand to some purported LLC that you actually own, and you embezzle the client's money. All right. Is the Silberman law firm necessarily liable for that?
You might be getting a malpractice claim, but no, not liable for my criminal act.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the general. As long as, look, the defense is, hey, Austin was background checked. Austin was
As long as the person wasn't hired negligently, like with this hotel, as long as this person they hired was not like a renowned jewel thief who's number one on the FBI most wanted, and they didn't do any relevant.
Now, there is something interesting about this fact pattern. I tend to think that the hotel might be liable for the clothes and not the jewelry. Because if the idea is the essence of what I'm hiring you to do, the hotel, is to wash my clothes and return my clothes, and the hotel says, "Oh, we lost your clothes."
Yeah.
That's on the hotel. That's, I hired you for the service. You were supposed to wash it instead of washing it. You lost it. You breached the contract and you were negligent in the handling of my clothes.
Maybe he could argue that the jewelry were like fixtures attached to the clothes, and therefore the clothes are worth a lot of more money.
That's a possibility. It was all a costing. It's certainly different if you're hiring the hotel to clean the jewelry, polish the jewelry. But no, leaving the jewelry in the clothes and then them being stolen, that's probably outside of the realm of contractual services by the hotel. So I'm coming down on hotel pays for clothes, but not responsible for jewelry. Good luck suing the housekeeper. You obviously are the housekeepers. It's a criminal act, but if you wanted to sue the housekeeper for conversion, more power to you, except the housekeeper's gone and judgment proof. All right. Next legal question. And this also happened. And it's that time of year. And it's not just high school. This could also be college, but this is the time of year where all over the state, kids are finding out whether they're getting into these private high schools that they applied for. Mom calls in, says, all right, Johnny was accepted to whatever, fill in the blank high school. Let's just call it best high school in Houston, whatever, a great high school. Let's call it great high school. Johnny was accepted into great high school. And we got this acceptance letter that said, all right, congratulations, you've been accepted. You've got until March 26th to accept the offer of admission. And once you do that, come on to school. So Johnny and Mom then go to a little event, some kind of social mixer to learn more about the school after being accepted. And the school really wants Johnny to attend. And so one of the reps at the school says, hey, we notice you haven't accepted yet. You better accept quickly, because if you don't, the spot's going to be filled because other people are accepting and there may not be a spot left for you, which is completely opposite of what the letter said. What do you think? What do you think about that? Let's say they accept and then the school says, oh, no, sorry, there's no spot. Case against the school, yes or no?
If they accept and the school says there's no spot, no, I don't think there is a case against the school in that situation.
Okay.
As long as the school did not take step left, if they offered them a spot, they don't accept by the time frame that it's offered, and they try to accept after the fact, then no, nothing. But if they try to accept within the time frame that it's offered and there's not a spot, then I think that's a problem. So.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly what happened. The former was what was happening here, is that they got this this offer of admission in a letter. And think about the old contract days. You remember when we were in contract law and you start out with offer? Okay, was an offer made?
Mm-hmm.
And was there acceptance?
Yes.
And then do you have a binding contract?
Yeah.
So in this case, it's, hey, if you mow my yard, I'll pay you $20. The offer is, if you mow my yard, I'll pay you $20. So the guy comes over, mows the yard, he completes the task, he's accepted. Now he's owed the $20.
Yes.
Now, here's my question for you. Can the school revoke, right?
Yes, absolutely. The school can revoke. Yeah. That happens all the time. You hear about people getting accepted to certain law schools and then going like, whoops, that was a mistake. We even offered that to someone else.
I didn't hear about it. I didn't know that was a thing. Really? I didn't know that was a thing. So school can revoke. If school sends out an offer of admission and says, okay, sorry, we're full, we're revoking our offer, I think that's completely okay.
Agreed.
My only question is, you're paying this application fee and they've explained the whole process. Could the application fee, the $200 application fee you've paid, be considered, okay, that's the consideration I'm entering into your contractual process for admission, and you don't get, and your offer is irrevocable
Yeah.
until the timeline. Maybe you start to get into those arguments. Also, what if it's the other way around? What if the student accepts, okay, pays a deposit, and then the terms of the contract say that, okay, it's binding, you owe the tuition once you accept, and then the student gets a better offer from another school
Yeah.
and says, hey, just keep the deposit, I'm going to the other school. What do you think about
Yeah.
that?
I don't think it's worth the school pursuing anything. Yes, but they probably are. The student would be liable for something, but the school's not going to sue them. They're just going to take the deposit as liquidated damages and just move on with their acceptance rate.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. That's Austin's got the practicality of that right. The legality of it is, and when you dig into these, and I've read these contracts, we've been hired on some of these cases before.
Yeah.
I've read these contracts. When you dig into these school contracts, you'll see language that specifically says this tuition is not a pro rata monthly thing, even though we're offering you a type of payment plan. Once you accept, the full amount of tuition becomes binding.
Yes.
And if you say, hey, see you later, you still owe the tuition for the rest of the year.
Yeah, but they know that if this is like undergrad, this is not, or probably even graduate school, this is not someone you're ever going to collect that money.
No, probably not. But I also think, Austin, that the school has an obligation to mitigate. And if we're talking about like a prestigious private high school, or Columbia is not that prestigious anymore, but or Harvard or whatever,
and they don't have any loans, right?
Yeah, and no loans. If Harvard says, "Hey, we're enforcing our tuition," then people are lined up for Harvard, they get somebody else in there that's going to pay the tuition. They don't get their damages in the breach of contract go kaput. It's goodbye because they mitigated. They're no longer damaged. And Harvard, are you familiar with the volume seller concept? Do you remember that from contract law? Yeah. So the volume seller concept is like, I sell a zillion widgets, so even though I'm going to sell the next one, I don't have to mitigate. Harvard is not a volume seller.
Yeah, no, they're not.
So I think schools are going to have a real hard time if they've got a waiting list and people lined up. They're going to have a real hard time arguing breach of contract on the damages component of it. All right, very interesting questions this time of year. That brings us to my favorite part of the show, rant and rave. We're talking about walking at night, playing in traffic. This actually was a real fact pattern. If you ever move into a neighborhood in one of these plasticky communities where there's an HOA and a pool and subdivision master plan community, there's these text chains and these group chats that circulate.
Yeah.
On this group chat thing with this neighborhood, and it's this big long text message, and it says, "Are you people idiots? Do you want to get killed? Who in their right mind puts on a navy blue jogging suit and starts walking their dog at 9:30 at night, and the dog's black and the leash is black and there's no sidewalks in the neighborhood?" And here's the thing. First of all, Austin, this is a big issue, and I don't think this is a law, but do you know if you're out there walking, are you supposed to walk with traffic or against traffic?
You're supposed to walk against traffic.
Okay. It turns out to be the appropriately accepted custom in North America.
Yeah.
I did not know that until about 10 years ago when someone actually stopped me and confronted me very angrily about it in my neighborhood when I was walking. And he was like, "I don't want to see you get killed out here. What are you doing?" And I was like, "What are you talking about? I thought I'm just taking a walk." And he was from the Northeast, from New York, a very aggressive guy. So, I went to look it up, and sure enough, he was right. And maybe that guy saved my life. So now you're right. The idea is if you're walking against traffic, you can see the cars coming and then you can jump into the ditch if you need to. That's it. All right, but what if you're on a bicycle, Austin? Is it against traffic or is it with traffic?
I thought it was, if you're on a bicycle and you're riding, probably on a bicycle, you have to be with traffic. If I'm thinking about it, like the way I see most cyclists who are all up in their fancy gear and stuff, they normally ride with it. So I would hope that they know the correct laws because they try to make sure everyone else does too. Yeah.
But bicycles are absolutely with traffic. And if a bicycle is on a roadway, they're subject to the same laws and ordinances of traffic. In fact, the village police, I think, have actually written a ticket for cyclists speeding, according to the traffic laws, going over 30 miles an hour. Yes.
Right. And they want everyone else to follow these like stupid bike laws.
Yeah.
They should be subject to everything. And I'm sorry if we have any cyclists who listen, but
Yeah.
I wish there were not any. So, anyways,
Okay. That's the law. Now, what if, Austin, this would be terrible. I call it natural selection. So if I'm driving in my neighborhood and I live in a neighborhood that doesn't have great street lighting, and someone's walking with traffic in a black jumpsuit, I just turn to my kids. I was like, I'm so glad I didn't hit them. That's, boys and girls, that's an example of natural selection. And what I mean by that is, if it would be terrible if I were to hit, injure, or kill one of those people, Austin, would I be liable?
probably not. Unless you were if you were like swerving around on the road and let's say this person was way off, like on the side, something like that, and you just hit them as a result of that, then you'd probably be liable for something. But if you're just driving normally and they're like in the middle of the freaking road wearing all black, yeah, probably not.
These people aren't even in the middle. There's no sidewalks. And if there's a sidewalk, I think they're required to walk on a sidewalk, but they're on the edge of the street and you're making a turn. You can't see them. I'm going to go out on a limb and just say, hey, if you hit somebody like that, terrible thing, you absolutely need to stop and render aid. That's where a lot of people get into trouble. They panic. Good people who are not criminals panic, and they just drive off. They freak out.
Yeah.
And if you think you would never do that, then you need to think twice, because you just don't know what's going on in your mind when you do something like that. But absolutely, you need to calm down, stop and render aid, wait for call 911, wait for the police. But you're probably not going to be held liable for negligence. And that there's a concept of contributory negligence there. It's going to be a tragedy. You're going to live with that for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
But if you hit someone doing
there's
that,
no way you could have known. Yeah.
Yeah. You stop and render aid. There's just an element of contributory negligence. Now, when I take a walk in my neighborhood, Austin, I do have the neon hat and the neon, that guy, like with the neon. And my teenagers make fun of me, and their friends see me walk around the neighborhood and they make fun of me. But
yeah, I agree. I prefer to look cool over living, to be perfectly honest.
Exactly. Exactly. Hey, that's the law on that. If we have rant and rave on this, I would say it's mostly young people, but I don't know. If you're out there and you're taking walks in neighborhoods, definitely walk against traffic. If there's a sidewalk, use the sidewalk. You really need to wear something bright. And if you're out there and think about it, if you're a driver and it's 6 o'clock and you're whizzing home because you just want to get home and dinner's on the table, think about that's the time, especially in the wintertime, everybody is out there walking their dogs at night. Yeah. You just really have to be careful in these neighborhoods, people. So
just wear glow in the dark clothes at night. It's very funny. So yeah.
It's better than dying. All right.
It is better than dying.
That brings our show to a close. I've been your host, Phil Silberman. Austin Black has been my co-host. Thank you for listening. Wherever you get your podcasts, be sure to like us, follow us, subscribe to us. Leave us reviews. And as a reminder, nothing in this show is to be considered legal advice. This has all been for entertainment purposes only. If you've got a question and want it answered on the podcast, email us at info@silblawfirm.com, and we will get it answered in a future episode. Everybody have a great rest of your week and weekend.
Thanks, guys.